appreciate everyone coming, residents, staff, all of you that are here today, media. And at this time, if you would stand for the invocation. I don't usually do this, but I would love to lead us today. Dear Father, thank you so much for bringing us together today for the meeting to discuss our city's business. I hope that today that everyone feels a sense of accomplishment as we look back over the last months and where we've come in the last year. And we're so close to the anniversary date. And I know that you understand more than anyone the feelings of each of our hearts. You can see into each of our minds, each of our hearts, and read those anxieties, those memories of what happened last year, the anxiety for the future. But we all know that you are God and you are in control, and that you will lead us just as surely in the days to follow as you have in the days that we've just come through. So at this time, we would just like to ask all these things in your name, that this meeting is to your glory, and that all of us leave here feeling like we have accomplished those things that we came here to do. In Christ's name I pray, amen. Would you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. Item number 3 is the, Mr. Miller, are you causing a disturbance back there? Item number 3 is the mayor's report. And since I mentioned Mr. Miller's name, I wanted to also mention that he's going to be a bit of a star Thursday in our commemoration and celebration day, because many of you may not know, but he has been featured in Florida Blues commercial. And we're looking forward to seeing that. And he's going to be speaking and honored by Florida Blue, who is one of our major sponsors for our big day on Thursday, as we look back at how we are survivors and how we are celebrating moving forward. So I also wanted to mention 2 other people who are here today. Catherine Gay, who does so much for the city, and with all that she does with event planning and the coordinating that she does. And she's worked so hard to make this day that's coming up on Thursday to be perfect. But she's not going to be able to be here because she has decided that this Saturday she's getting married. So she's going, no, she didn't just decide. So she's getting married and she's going to be out of town, and we wish you well and we hope you have a beautiful day. And then the other person I wanted to mention is a journalist that I admire very much, because he is just that. He is a journalist. He's not a sensationalist. He's somebody who gets the facts right. And he is what I call the epitome of what a journalist should be, who is working with media to tell the complete story, bad or good, and he gets it right every time. Colin Breaux with the News Herald is here with us for the last time. He's taken a job out in California, and I'm going to personally miss him, because not only has he been a journalist, but he was at the cleanup days volunteering, walking through the ditches in boots and picking up trash in Lynn Haven. He's dressed as a superhero with a group of friends on so many times, so many events for children, and none of that for recognition, but just because he's just a really good person. So Colin, we're going to miss you. I just wanted to say that. And you can still write, the truth about me even after I compliment you. I wasn't trying to get good marks there. And then I wanted to mention that I had had the opportunity and the honor this week to have a conversation with both Congressman Neil Dunn and with Governor Ron DeSantis. So that was a really nice opportunity. And also met with officials from Florida Blue, Publix, and St. Joe, who are all helping us with this celebration. There's free food this Thursday, so come on out about 12:30. We're going to have 5,000 free meals to give away. Fried chicken, sides, Publix, Subways, cookies, chips, and lots of good entertainment as well. And I don't want to take all the thunder. I'll let the city manager and others talk about that day as well. St. Joe Foundation will be here handing out free trees on that day. So we hope everybody will spend the whole day with us. And it will, after we spend the first hour or so from 11 to 12 to about 12:30, just looking back on what has happened and what that day was like, and the blessing of just being a survivor. After that, and after we have a few guest speakers and some music, then we'll have lunch, and we will then have nonstop entertainment until probably 7:38, culminating with our concert in the park. But we'll have many of our area schools, our choirs, the children will be here. And one of the things that I really am excited about is there will be opportunities for people to look for some help with some of the anxiety. And I will just tell you, I'm right there at the front of the line with this, just thinking about the day and remembering what happened. I know that I feel anxiety. I feel emotions that are hard to describe. And I know that everyone's probably having their own, everyone's dealing with it in a different way. But there are going to be some opportunities there for counseling. There's going to be some yoga classes. There are going to be games. There are going to be lots of ways to deal with the stress of what we remember about that day. So it's going to be very, very exciting. And finally, I had the opportunity yesterday. I spent about 2.5 hours riding around. Chief Ramey, thank you for the loan of the police golf cart. It had the blue lights on it. I only used them twice. I had to play with them a little bit. But the news team from Orlando, Channel 13, was here, and they were recapping and going back and looking at where we were and where we are now. And I've been following them on Twitter today, and they've been putting out our story on Twitter nationally today. So I was very happy about that. And that's all I have. So I'll move on. Oh, I have a proclamation. I'm sorry, for 10/10. I don't guess I have that in front of me. We'll read the proclamation on the 10th. I'm sorry. So then we'll move on to item number 4, the commissioner's report, and I'll start with Commissioner Tender. Good afternoon.
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, I had a list of things that I was going to talk about, and I was just telling Commissioner Russell I left them laying at home.
Oh, I was afraid I'd stolen some of your stuff. I'm sorry.
No,
Okay.
no, you said everything I had to say.
Okay.
No, I left it at home. So I promised the 2 residents that I promised I would speak about this tonight. I will talk to the city manager tomorrow and call you tomorrow. And other than that, I have no report.
All right. Thank you. Commissioner Russell.
Thank you, Mayor. It's been, a little bit of a crazy couple of weeks. I've had several conversations with the city attorney about different issues. Chief Delanger, Chief Ramey, I've had a couple of conversations with them about some agenda items that may be coming up tonight. Building department, thank you for your help. And also Amanda Richards, thank you for the land use help. I continue to field questions and help any citizen I can. And that's all I've got tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Aldridge.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, coming down off of the month or so of budget talks, that was a good time. A lot of fun for about a month. Coming down off of that, it feels like jumping right back into the mix of the rebuild and the recovery. So, like Commissioner Russell and Commissioner Tender and the mayor has said, we've been trying to help citizens fielding calls, and we're all really looking forward to Thursday. To be honest with you, we're just very, very excited about it. And I agree with what Mayor said. We're all dealing with it in our own way, but at the end of the day, we're all still here. We're all able to remember and look back and see how far we've come. And so that's exciting to me. It's exciting to our staff. And I want to thank each and every one of you guys as citizens, because again, I've said this before and I'll say it until I take my last breath. I saw real American people in the midst of all the chaos we see all in the news and everywhere else. In the midst of the storm, I saw people come together, rebuild each other's stuff, help neighbors, cut down trees. That's something to be proud of. That's something I personally take a lot of pride in, and that I see each and every one of us here, we care. And we can make it happen. We'll continue to make it happen. Let's do this, right? As they said on Flight 93. So anyway, that's all I got, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Perno.
Thank you, Mayor. I just had quite a few citizens ask me about the backflow irrigation thing, and I know Mr. Kidwell's going to talk about that soon. So I hope we can bring light to that and put people at ease that had concerns. And other than that, I had a few health complications over the last couple of weeks, but I'm feeling a lot better now. So I appreciate everybody's concern about that, and I'm happy to be here and work for y'all as a commissioner. So thank you.
Thank you, and we're glad you're feeling better. Taking now to item number 5, the acting city manager's report. Ms. Vicki Gaynor.
Thank you, Mayor. First and foremost, I'd like to recognize some people, employees of the month, it's getting where it's pretty hard to find one employee because everyone is doing so many jobs and have done them so well. And so this year, this month, Employee of the Month, we had the leadership team had to choose two people again. Those employees are, and I'm not sure whether or not Gloria will make it back in town, Gloria Thompson and Mike Brown. Mike, if you'll come on up and then we'll talk about some of the things. Since October 10th, these two people have worked countless hours to serve contractors, vendors, and residents. These two positions are critical to the permitting process and plans being permitted. Gloria has been with the city for more than 12 years. Before the storm, she was basically a one-woman show until we added Mike Brown, who came out to help her out. Gloria has dedicated her life to the city of Lynn Haven. Mike Brown was a code enforcement officer. He has been working with the city for 7.5 years, and upon taking on his role, Mike previously had a lot of knowledge already in this area, and he gained even more knowledge to help Gloria out. And boy, did we need him during this time. We probably needed 10 more, but Mike and Gloria worked like they were 10 people. And when I say that, I mean that very honestly, from 7 o'clock in the morning to sometimes 7 at night, just trying to make sure that the citizens are taken care of. And so I just am extremely grateful to have people like Mike and Gloria working. We've been through the best of times and we've been through some worst of times, but we are still here. I'm grateful for all the things that they both have done and their tireless efforts. And while we are still being kind of overwhelmed with a lot of questions, a lot of foot traffic, we are being progressive in the way we are with the building department, and I think it's going to come a long way even more. While I'm here, I also want to recognize Mike. Mike is going to retire in about a month and a half. But here's a testament to how great he is. Mike said, once I retire, I would love to come back and help out and help things to continue to move along. I would love to help the building department. I will even come in and help train someone if that will help people in terms of us getting things done faster. This is the reason why Mike and Gloria are employees of the month. Employee of the Month presented to Mike Brown in recognition of your outstanding performance, productivity, and dedicated service. We have just a little something that can take you and your wife out. Dinner, okay? Yes, indeed. Yes. Turn it around and give me a good photo. Just a couple of things to talk about that have been happening over the past 2 weeks. Of course, we are really excited about October 10th. Staff has been working really hard. We've met every Monday now for about 2.5 months. We know that this kind of event does not happen overnight, and it happens with everyone working and being a part of this event. Secondly, we had the opportunity to meet with Mike Weber Design. Mike had originally put together some designs for the senior center before the storm, and we really liked some of those ideas, but we did have him go back and do some other things to really make it more functional. And so we met with him along with our community services director and facility maintenance director, and we really feel like that this is going to put our senior center where it needs to be. Great exciting news is that the contractors are going to start around October 14th. Of course, when we talk about materials, that's going to take a little bit of time for those materials to get in. The metal probably is going to be, 2-3 weeks to get in. But the trusses for the senior center is going to be another additional 2 weeks. But they are going to go on and get started on the service center and the garden club. So we're still going to get started on October the 14th. It just won't be the senior center. But as soon as those things are in, they'll get started. We anticipate any moment, with our fingers crossed, money from the state in the amounts of $4.9 million and $1.67 million, a little bit over $6.6 million that we're going to be receiving. Talked to them today just to make sure we're still on track. Yes, we are. And so we should receive that in the next couple of days. Great news, the grant that we have of clearing the waterways, that grant is just about ended. We're just cleaning up just a few spots, and we'll have an inspection from a representative next week. We have covered 10.5 miles of really waterways and ditches in this grant. And we are grateful for that. We also are meeting with Tetra Tech. That's another department where we talked about the HMPG grants and what resources we have available for us to submit those applications. Also met with the city attorney, our public works director, Tetra Tech, and some others on putting together our RFQ for architecture and design for the first part of rebuilding the city. We are excited that we're going to probably be able to put that out around October 21st. It is now in the hands of procurement and FEMA, and once we get that back, we can put it out to bid. Also, we had Mayor and I had the opportunity to meet with Doug Moore. He's our county liaison about affordable housing. He has some great initiatives that are going to be coming forward. This project will assist developers as well as residents in finding some kind of a workforce housing for those folks who are working hard every day, but the rent may be a little bit high or even help close on loans. So we are excited about that is coming our way. Excuse me. Also met with the city engineers about some carryover projects from last year and some projects that are going to be going over this year. And we are just excited about some other things that will be going on. Met with also the HOA president from Hawks Landing about the medium and the traffic issues right there at the school. Lots of exciting things, but those are just a couple of things that we have been doing this week. I will now ask Greg Kidwell, if he'll come up and talk about the backflow issue. We have had a lot of questions about it, and so I want to give him this opportunity to kind of go over some things, because I know that residents have received some letters and maybe not be as clear as we'd like for this to be.
Sure. Start off with, I'd like to mention that this is a FDP mandated program. It's not something the city initiated on their own. We're just following their guidelines. It was noted in our last sanitary survey of our water plant that we were not in compliance. The ordinances were changed. We have a clear dividing line between the water meter and private property. So we have a clear line in the sand. The ordinance also gave us some teeth. If we have problems with non-compliance, we can actually turn their water off. Our previous ordinance didn't allow for that fact. So in a nutshell, I guess it'd probably be easier to take some questions to address some specifics.
Does anyone from the commission have questions for Mr. Kidwell regarding the backflow devices or just the ordinance in general?
Mayor, if I may.
Please.
Mr. Kidwell, this is strictly for the irrigation meter, correct?
Correct. This ordinance and the rule from FDP does address the household devices as well, requiring them to be changed out every 5 to 10 years. That'll be the next step once we get in compliance on our irrigation, and we can start working back and taking care of the residential side.
Mayor, may I continue?
Sure, go ahead.
Anybody that has a reclaim meter, are they going to be required to do this with a reclaim meter?
No, the rule specifically states reclaim does not factor in this. Because we don't put our reclaimed water out into a storage pond, it's in a vessel, a storage tank, million-gallon storage tank. We don't have to do that. So it's just for potable drinking water well systems that want an irrigation meter.
Is there any-
I'm sorry, Mayor, may I
No, go ahead.
continue? I'm sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
Previously, we had discussed this, and there was some numbers thrown around about the possible cost. I've been contacted by a couple of homeowners, two of them of which have already done this, to the tune of $700 apiece.
Whoa.
And actually, I have one of their bills. They forwarded me their bill. I've got serious concerns of forcing our residents to pay that kind of money. I had mentioned this to the city manager and suggested that we try to find a qualified vendor that we'll recommend that will negotiate a price significantly lower than this that we can recommend to the residents. I would love for this city to consider that if we don't look at other ways to try to offset this cost to the citizens.
There is also an option on a device. It sounds like that was a reduced pressure device. There's another device that is significantly cheaper.
I'll let you have a copy of this. It actually doesn't say what kind of device it is. It just, I know he installed, it says installed and tested a backflow to the tune, like I said, $700, which I just can't see forcing residents to pay $700 a piece. Thank you, Mayor.
Sure. The one you were speaking of earlier, I believe, was even like under $100, wasn't it?
Correct. The
Yes.
device itself, I've seen prices 80 less. I've been told online they've got them for $60. Plus, of course, the material to start to install it. We are allowing our homeowners to install these devices. Just call us out. We'll look at it, make sure you're off the ground the right height, everything looks good, you got it facing the right way. We're also letting irrigation people put these devices in. So sounds like that might have been a plumber that may have put that in.
Are there other questions from the commission for Mr. Kidwell?
Yes. Yes, Mayor, I have one, or two, actually, I guess. What are we looking at for a drop dead date for these residents? Because that's a question I keep getting, and I don't really have.
We purposely left it open.
Right.
As long as I can show some major steps towards compliance, that will meet DEP's issue. We'll probably do a follow-up in the spring with another letter addressing some of the non-compliant ones. So it was purposely not put a drop dead date because of everything going on.
Right.
But we'll be following it up. This is an ongoing program. This
Yeah,
is just
that's
the
kind of
first
a
step.
follow-up question on that is I
Sure.
can't imagine that we're the only municipality in the state of Florida that's raising Cain about this.
Sure.
So is there, if there's any waffling going on in the legislation, I agree. I think dragging the feet's not necessarily a bad thing. So.
Right. And I have not heard of any of that. My conversations with Mr. John Pope, Northwest District, was this is the rule. You got to apply. So comply.
Thank you. Anyone else from the commission?
Greg, I just wanted to ask, one resident came to me and said that based on his ownership of his property, that he wouldn't have to, he said he has a line item where it says 0 and he wouldn't be responsible for anything in the way of that irrigation type thing on it. And I wanted him to clarify it with me. But
Yeah, I would want to speak to the
yeah,
resident in person.
yeah,
It sounds like he might be referring to the actual invoice from City Hall for his irrigation meter,
mhm.
which that's our line in the sand. That's where the city's responsibility stops. Then everything past that, hooking up to the irrigation system, installing a hose bib, whatever he was doing, that would, fall on the owner.
'Cause I've talked to several citizens, and some of them are taking the steps to install it, and others are they're kind of drawing a line in the sand themselves,
Sure.
So I think so I wanted to get as much understanding out there so people could realize,
Absolutely.
you know,
Any questions or concerns, send them down to the
I've-
utility department. We've had several walk-ins. and-
I've given
and
them
phone
your
calls.
number, trust me, so we'll keep it going.
Mayor, if I may ask one more
Yes,
question.
please go ahead.
Mr. Kidwell, it has been brought to my attention that we have a prohibition against wells in Lynn Haven. Is that correct?
Only in the reclaimed area. Part of being a reclaimed service provider is that we want to encourage use. We've actually done a little too good of a job on that. If you've followed Facebook, we've actually ran out of reclaimed water several times the last few weeks due to the drought. Our wastewater plant's producing 1.3 million. We're running right at 1 million gallons in reclaimed water. So
So that is-
average for the month.
So that is another option, though. The residents could put a shallow well in to run their sprinkler system.
If
want.
they're not in a reclaimed service provider area,
But if they're in a reclaimed service provider, they don't have
Then-
to do this.
correct,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
Because they have reclaimed water, not potable drinking water for irrigation.
Thank you.
Are there other questions from the board? I believe we have some from the public right here, this gentleman.
Yeah, there's a couple questions that was confusing to me. Number one, well, let me go along with what Russell was saying. Can we get a list of approved devices? Maybe that would help, especially with the idea of pricing. Say this, you don't have to give a price, say this are cheaper alternatives. That would help.
So
These
could we put
devices
those
are-
on the city website? Maybe that would
Sure.
be a good place to
We
put
can do
that.
Yeah,
Okay.
they're available online for purchase. You can,
The kind of the way I read it, maybe I didn't read it right, but I went on the Florida statute over here, and the way I read it, which is probably not right because I can't read very good, is if you have an irrigation meter and a well, then you have to have one. Is that not true? Or is-
that is not quite correct.
Okay.
Yeah, if you read further into it, it'll say if you have a drinking water, that's part of it. But if you read further into the rule, it tells you that if you have a city supplied water system for irrigation, you have to have one of these devices. And I'll get with you afterwards. I have the rule for you if you want to look at it.
Okay, I mean, because it kind of read that to start with, that if you have a well, you definitely have to have a well. I can see
Absolutely,
that, But
yeah.
it doesn't matter. If you have an irrigation meter, you gotta have a backflow meter.
Correct.
Period.
Mr. Schultz.
Where's the reclaimed area point of reference?
It kind of jogs in and out. It's mostly to the east of us, around the sports complex, and to the north. Primarily going down East Avenue, and then it kind of goes down Mosley, goes up and down Highway 77 for a short distance.
Any other questions from the public for Mr. Kidwell? Doesn't, okay, yes. You can just stay where you are since he's up front, yeah.
The real question that I've got is, I don't perceive that it takes much time to test these things. And if we know where they are, and if the city mobilized to test every 2 years, would it cost the city very much to do it?
Well, if we were to go down that road, a couple issues. One, you've got public personnel working on private property. It could be done. It would take a staff and a person, vehicle and all that. Right now, we're kind of sharing this duty. We test our own devices in-house. We have qualified people for that. So it's possible it would take commission to weigh in on that and figure out how to let us do work on a private property and still have that line in the sand.
One more question. It looked like they have to be above ground. Is that true?
That is
All of
correct.
them. If you got a backflow, it's gotta be above ground, the way it's shown in the
Yes,
diagram.
that's correct, 18 inches. Because these devices vent to atmosphere, if you were to install them below ground, you could actually suck groundwater into the system.
Does it have to be near there's nothing in there about having it near the meter, so it could be behind like a fence?
Sure, unbroken pipe, let's say you want to mount it up next to the house where you can freeze proof it and, make it look nice with bushes or whatever. Sure. Yeah, just unbroken pipe to the device and then your system.
Are there other questions from the public? Thank you, Mr. Kidwell.
Thank you.
Appreciate it very much. Did you have more, Miss? Okay. So that would conclude our city manager's report. Moving on to item number 6 on the agenda is the city attorney's report. Mr. Albritton?
Thank you, Mayor. I have one item I'd like to discuss with the commission, and that is the city manager selection process. I previously provided the commission with a tentative schedule for the in-person candidate interviews, tentatively scheduled for November 12th. Also provided as a possible option the public interview date as conducting a workshop at 3 p.m. on November 12th. And then consideration is the date that we would actually select the next city manager for Lynn Haven. So that, if you've read the letter and you've seen the dates and times that I have selected for the in-person interviews, essentially that would begin at 8:30 and conclude sometime around 2:30, and that allows for an hour per commissioner, per candidate, and an hour break from 11:30 to 12:30. So what I would ask this commission is to consider the schedule of the in-person interviews to be conducted by each member individually and approve that proposed schedule, or inform me of any alterations, additions, deletions I need to make, and then approve it. Second, consider the possible scheduling of a public workshop on November 12th at 3 p.m. for the public interviews of these candidates, and then consider a time certain for the selection of the city manager. The time certain is, all of this is within the purview of the city commission, but I've suggested either the 12th, the day of the 12th, because we have a regular meeting at 4 p.m., or conduct a special meeting on the 15th, which is a Friday, November 15th, for the sole purpose of the selection of the city manager. That way, because we'll have to move into negotiations with the selected candidate, and we'll have the new year that'll come upon us very quickly. So that would, if we do it in the beginning and first half of November, I think that'll give us plenty of time to negotiate and get a permanent plan going into the new year.
I appreciate all the work that you've done on this, Mr. Albritton. And so at this point, what I would like to do is open this for discussion to the commission. If there is discussion, or if there's a motion, whatever your pleasure is, whether you would be amenable to accepting what the attorney has proposed that we do as far as a process on that day, or if you have a problem with that, or if you have a suggestion. So the discussion is now open. So
Mayor,
yes.
I totally agree with your suggestion. I think that's great. Do it all in one day. And I like the interview times. It does seem like a long time to interview, but I'd rather have more time than not enough. So I totally agree with November 12th.
Okay.
And I
Anyone?
would anticipate not everybody's going to spend a full hour, so we'll probably end before that, my estimated 2:30, but an hour each for each commissioner, for each individual seemed to be a fair amount of time for both the commission to get the commissioner to get their questions in, and sufficient time for the individuals to make their point to the commissioner during the interview.
And I would also say, I'm just going to say this is probably what I would do as the chairman of the meeting, is once the public workshop is over and then we get into the regular commission meeting, if one of you felt that you just needed, 5 or 10 minutes to kind of collect your thoughts, look back over your notes, consider what maybe the public asked, how that weighs in, I could do a short recess with the admonishment, of course, not to speak to each other at all, but a short recess just to gather your thoughts, and then we could come back and make a decision if you wanted to do it all in one day. If you feel that that's too much, as Mr. Albritton suggested, I think he suggested the 15th, maybe we could do a special meeting if you'd rather not do that, but he just needs direction today from you specifically. So,
Mayor, if I may,
yes.
I personally am agreeable to everything, with the exception of making a decision on the 12th. I would like us to push it to the 15th and give us time to, I mean, that's a lot of information to have to process and make a decision on in that quick of a time period. I'm one of those guys that wants to mull things over and think about it and rehash things in my head. So I would prefer to see us reconvene on the 15th and have a meeting then and make the decision at that time.
So the 12th is the regular Tuesday meeting. The 15th would be a Friday. So that may be a problem for some of the members of the commission. I don't know. Do other people have comments about, tell us what's your pleasure? Would you rather do it in one day, or are you looking at the same thing that Mr. Russell is looking for?
Mayor, if I may.
Go ahead.
I tend to agree with Commissioner Russell, because if we are going to be listening to the public ask the candidates questions, you're right. We do need time to think about how they've dealt with the questions and how they've handled themselves. I would hate to have to just sit here in a hurry and go, okay, well, I think 2 days or a week, whatever it is perfect.
And Mayor, if I may,
Go ahead.
it doesn't have to be that Friday. I mean, we could do it that Thursday. We'd be concerned making it that same day. I mean, so whatever day after that, as long as we've got a day or two to mull things over.
Are there suggestions?
Mayor, I think the 14th, that one of the commissioners had notated that he had a conflict on that day.
Okay.
Mayor, if I may,
Go ahead.
I don't disagree with either one of the commissioners. I mean, there is going to be a very busy day that day. It's going to be a lot going on. So, I would make the motion that we do the 12th interview and the 15th, a special meeting to make the selection process at that point.
Would you include in your motion a time for the meeting?
The special meeting you're referring to, Mayor?
Yes, the special meeting. At the pleasure of the mayor.
I'm amenable to whatever time. So we just need to put a time into the motion. So
Let's do a 10 o'clock motion, 10 o'clock a.m. For the November 15th date.
I'll
Okay.
second.
there's been a motion and a second that we would postpone the actual selection of or the offer rather to the candidate on Friday the 15th at 10 a.m. And there has been a second. Is there any further discussion? Go ahead.
Yes, Mayor, I have one more question.
Okay.
Not that I expect this to happen, but just having everything laid out really clear. If it turns out that the commission wanted to reopen invitation for more candidates after we interviewed, when would that take place? On the 15th or the 12th?
If I would like to interject on that. I think that, again, you said that you would need more time to think about it. So it seems like that you would be, if you're thinking about opening the interviews back up, that you didn't want any of the three that you've interviewed, that you would also need that time to think that out. So I would say that you would come back on the Friday and maybe entertain a motion to that effect, if that's what you want to do.
Thank you.
Mr. Albritton, would that be acceptable, do you think, as far as the process?
I think a commissioner could make a motion to perform the activity proposed by Commissioner Tender at any point from today until the 15th, until there's an actual individual selected. I do think that it would probably be most appropriate if that is a consideration for the commission to do it on the 15th, considering that we've had the discussion about the need and necessity for time to consider the three candidates after an all-day interview process.
Thank you. So there's been a motion and a second that we would have the interview, well, not the interview, the selection of the applicant that we interviewed on the 12th. We would have that selection on Friday at 10 a.m. Is there any further discussion?
And the commission is acceptable with a workshop at 3 p.m. on November 12th, correct?
Is there any comment from the public regarding the process that the commission's looking at? There appears to be none. Ms. Gaynor, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Aldridge,
Yes.
Commissioner Perno,
Yes.
Commissioner Tender,
Yes.
Commissioner Russell,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes. So that stands approved, and we will move on to the next item. Mr. Albritton, thank you for all your work on that.
Thank you, ma'am.
Item number 7 is public commentary. This is an opportunity for anyone in the public to speak to this commission on any topic that you would like about the city of Lynn Haven. As a reminder that the way we conduct our meetings, we also allow public commentary on each item as we discuss it. So whichever way that you would like to have your comments made. So is there anyone who'd like to speak at this time? Yes, sir.
David Cooley, 206 Georgia Avenue. It took me a while to word this, but I would like to congratulate the News Herald for reporting the apparent lack of oversight of our Lynn Haven city government. This started with the hiring of our ex-city manager. He would probably be still working for Lynn Haven if he hadn't been arrested for an unrelated matter. I would like that our new city manager have a significant amount of experience as a city manager and be hired outside the area. My question is, what checks and balances are being put in place to ensure that our tax dollars are being spent efficiently? And what consequences put in place if it doesn't? That's the question.
I would, just as the chairperson of the meeting, I would offer a couple of comments, and then of course I'll let the rest of the commission, if they would like to speak as well. I think the first and most important one is the significantly stepped up and in-depth background checks which have been done on these candidates who have applied. There were 50 who applied, and after they went through that background check, all withdrew. We're down to 3 candidates. They withdrew. And so that spoke volumes to me about how in depth that investigation was. And I would like to congratulate Chief Ramey and his investigative team for what they did. As far as checks and balances, those checks and balances are covered in the charter of the city of Lynn Haven, that the city manager, and I, as you probably know, I've been very vocal about my opinion of the city manager form of government, but that is neither here nor there. We have that in our charter and it has not been changed. If a city manager is not performing in a way that is amenable to this community, the community can certainly come to this commission, and with a vote of 3, a majority, that city manager can be released. Now, sometimes that will cost money if it's done for different reasons. I'll just let the attorney caution me if you feel that I'm going on shaky ground because of the ongoing investigation. Just please stop me as I continue with this. But I would say to you that although the other city manager, our past city manager, resigned, many times people resign not necessarily because they want to. So I would not want you to have in your mind that this commission was not prepared to take steps if the city manager had not resigned. Does that make sense?
I guess my issue is,
Come on back up, sir. If you, I don't know if I hit what you were asking me.
in a way, well, you said it's in the charter. Well, the charter obviously didn't protect what happened, as the News Herald put a good light on it.
But with all due respect, sir, and with Colin with the News Herald, with all due respect, the media has not reflected accurately everything that has happened, and I can't speak to it because of the investigation, but I will tell you that if you're relying on the News Herald or the local TV stations to give you all of the facts and the accurate facts,
I understand.
we're not quite there, but go ahead.
I guess as a resident of Lynn Haven, I knew this was been going on ever since he became city manager. I hate to say that, but there was a lot of.
I'm not sure what you're talking about, that you knew this had been going
Specifically,
on.
There was a lot of no bid contracts given out in this city with no, and some of them were worded so that they could only be won by a certain individual. And I think if you go back and look at the contracts, as you've seen in the paper, that's exactly what happened.
Sir, I saw the contracts before the paper did, and I won't speak to it any further. I think I see I can't speak to it any further, and so I'm going to defer to attorney and let him answer for me. I just don't want to step over the line of where we've been directed as a staff by investigative teams of what we can say, and as elected officials, all that I will say to you is that what happened with the city manager is was not something that I would support. And after it happened, I think I just have to stop because I'm afraid I'm going to say something I'm not supposed to. But we have all the checks and balances that we can possibly put into place. One never knows how someone's going to perform. For example, I promised to do 14 things when I was elected mayor. In September of 2018, they had all been accomplished, every one of them. But you had no assurances that I was going to do that in 2015 when I was elected. And if I had not done those things, then you as the electorate had the choice to come back and not elect me. And so I use that as an example. If we hire a city manager and 3 months in, we find that there's something that's untoward, we can certainly end that contract. I've never seen you come to this microphone. You told me you had knowledge that there was something like that going on. I have never had you come to me and tell me that. I would have appreciated it if you had had those feelings or thought. So I'm just saying, we can't act on what we don't know about.
This is what I've heard from quite a few city employees, but they couldn't say anything because they were worried about getting fired. And I think most of the commissioners knew that. If you had a lot of discussions with the city employees, they wouldn't say anything. They couldn't because they knew they would get fired.
Well,
Anyway,
first of
that's
all,
about
you've
it.
got 2 commissioners who were not
I
here
understand.
for
I
a long
understand
period of
that.
time.
I'm just saying this is old stuff, and I guess my checks and balances would be
Okay.
when a contract is put out, I would like an individual not associated with that to look over the contracts. The number one, to make sure they're valid and who's bidding on it, and make sure it's not worded so that that one company could be the only one bidder on it. That's what I'm asking. That is
I
not in
am.
place. That is not in place. You know, and so
I'm
that's
not
all
sure I agree with you, but I'm listening to you.
Okay. so
Okay.
in other words,
Because
just
we
put
do
out a
have
contract.
those,
I
we do
just-
have a contract. We do have a bidding process in the city that I believe is legitimate. But your voice has been heard.
Okay.
If you would like to come in and speak further and make the details, known, I'm not sure I understand everything you're saying. Would any of the other commissioners like to address what has been said here, or maybe you could answer the question in a better way?
Mayor, if I may, Ms. Gaynor, I believe we've brought on a new employee for one of the job tasks for her is verifying not the solicitations and the POs that go out. If you would describe and elaborate on that, because that would be more in your realm.
Yes. So this year I did put in a budget manager, and before any POs can be written or any money spent, all POs go to the budget manager. Budget manager looks up and see if it's in their account. If it's in their account, then she signs off on it. She has to sign off on it first. Then it goes to the city manager. If it comes to me without a detailed comment of why they are spending that money, and all of the department heads will tell you this, I send it back to the budget manager to make sure that there's proper documentation on that. And so there are literally 3 signatures on it: the department head, the budget manager, and the city manager. So that is the control that we put in place to make sure that everybody has seen it, they've touched it, it has the correct documentation, and then all is well. Secondly, every contract that has ever come through here has always been seen by an attorney. When previous attorneys was here, those contracts are sent to the attorney. They look them over, they read them, they say, take out this, add this, and then that contract is put before the commission. It's a contract, not an agreement, as the News Herald said. And then lastly, those are signed off by the mayor, usually the city manager, and then if there's an attest, that means that usually it's the deputy clerk or a person who knows something about that contract. And so there are definitely controls in place.
Mayor, if I may.
Yes, please go ahead.
I've had several discussions with the city attorney as well as the acting city manager about issues related to this. And I have suggested a course of action. The attorneys informed me that it would take a charter change and would require a referendum. And I'm going to explain to you what I think should happen. We currently have a city manager or an acting city manager, and she is also the city clerk. I want to separate those positions, have a separate city clerk and a separate city manager. Have the city manager run the city like she's doing everything like it currently is the place. The city clerk will be in charge of the budget and all purchasing. Both of those will answer to the commission. The city clerk will not answer to the city manager. That way, if there is an issue, she can bring it to the commission without having to worry about retaliation or losing her job. I think that would give us the check and balance that we need to make sure that what has happened in the past never happens again. So I'm fairly certain you're going to see that on the agenda here pretty soon for this commission to discuss it. But I've had several discussions with the acting city manager as well as the attorney about this. I wish there was a way we could do this without a referendum change, but if that's what it takes, I'm hoping this commission will consider what I'm suggesting. Yes, ma'am.
I would enter into that discussion with you, Commissioner Russell. First of all, it's not 2 separate positions. The way the charter is written, the city clerk is the same person as the city manager. We did not have a city manager in Lynn Haven until 1948, and it was done in a meeting one night without a lot of citizen input. And if you look back over the history of city managers, it's been much like it has in the last 10 years that I can remember. There's been a constant turnover, there's been constant bickering, there's been constant fighting. And I'm just going to say, I am not pushing forward with the strong mayor government at this point. I have about half the signatures I need for a referendum. Depending on what happens with this selection, I may still go forward with it because the turnover of city managers that this city has seen over just the last decade reflects the dissatisfaction of the citizens. It reflects some of the things that have happened that should not have happened. And you cannot guarantee the actions of any human being. You can only guarantee your own. And what basically the city manager form of government does is it takes the electorate, it takes the power out of your hands and puts it in a commission's hands. And it may take 2 or 3 elections before you get 3 commissioners who will agree to get rid of a city manager if they happen to like that city manager, even though the city manager is not doing what he or she should. So changing the charter, it's semantics as far as I'm concerned. The city manager is the city clerk. The city manager answers to the commission, which there's a check and balance right there. If the commission does not agree with what the city manager is doing, the commission can stop it. I wish that I could say all that I would like to say concerning the question that you asked, because the way that all came about very quickly. And as soon as I was aware of it, I did take action, sir. So there are checks and balances in place, but the main thing that happened here is that we had the same auditing firm for this city for over 20 years, and I asked to have them replaced over and over and over to the commission, and they, not this commission, but the beginning commission in 2015. There was no check and balance in place by that internal audit, and now there is. For example, and I don't mean to digress, but this is very important to me in light of what's happened in the media recently. The mayor over the past 2 decades gets a list of checks to sign. Yes, I see that all these checks have been written, when it should have been just the opposite. The mayor should have not signed, oh, these checks have already been written and sent out. The mayor should have approved those checks before they were ever printed. And that's what happened in this case. And now those checks and balances are there, and we should have had an auditing firm that made that happen. So the internal accounts procedures, if they're not in place and they're not correct, it's not that anyone is basically at fault within the city. They were following the procedures that were in place because of an outdated auditing firm that had audited itself for 20 years. And once you do that every year, you're not going to go back and say you made a mistake. Best practice accounting with the state of Florida suggests a new auditing firm every 5 years, and this city had one for over 2 decades. So that, I think, was our basic problem, but that's just me. And I'm done. Would anyone else on the commission like to reflect on that or make a comment? And then we'll move on. Okay, any other public comment? Mr. Moody, thank you for your comment. Yes, Mr. Miller. On any topic, hopefully another one.
When we select the city, we want someone that's going to take this city under their hand and guide us in the right way. And I hope we take that under consideration. Get a good city manager that's going to be here and that's going to stay here with us, that knows the people in Lynn Haven.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Is there anyone? Go ahead.
I want to ask this. With the state of Florida on sidewalk, if the city applies for a grant, do the city have to match that grant with the state?
Different grants have different matches,
Yes,
do they not?
And
Yes.
we have applied for one. I think we have not heard back. 2 that we have not heard back from.
I'd like for you to consider looking at a grant for 17th Street. I think it's from Colorado all the way down to Minnesota on that side, because there's a lot of people moving in that area. There's a lot of people walking in the highway down there. So hope you can look into that and see if we can get that done. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Any topic? Pardon me? Mr. Janke said he's already applied for that, sir. So we're rolling. Anyone else? Mr. Schultz.
I'm Mr. Schultz. I live at 509 Pennsylvania Avenue. Can I ask what we're going to do with the garden club?
Ms. Gaynor, would you like to address? We were just talking about it because that bid has already gone out. Go ahead, Ms. Gaynor.
So the bid has already gone out. There are some sketches to redo the garden club just a little bit. Garden club has just a small amount of work. It needs a roof on it, has some work that needs to be done and inside. And our team, facility maintenance team is actually going to do the work inside because of the fact that it can be done, and we can also get reimbursed for that. So we'll have to go out and do get an additional contractor to do that. So once the roof is on, our facility maintenance guys will move in, fix up the inside of it, and we like to turn that into, first of all, try to give the seniors a place to meet, and maybe some type of social event area that we can utilize for different meetings. And so we have some plans for that, but that's initially what we're trying to get that one ready for first, because we don't know how long the senior center is going to take place.
Okay. Second of all, the traffic that I've spoke to several of you already on this issue. The traffic in the morning between the hours of 7:30 and maybe 8:30, and then at night at the closing hours of work, 5 to 6 maybe before, come barreling over that road. And I know there's police cars, slow them down. I know the speed limit says 35 miles an hour. I'm talking from north south through Lynn Haven. Well, in the morning where I live, I can see, I live in Pennsylvania, 509, lower down there. I can actually see across the bay now. I can see the condo over there. I could never see before because the trees are gone, but that's immaterial. But traffic backs up. You can see it back up way across the other side of the bridge. So what they're doing, and I can't say I don't blame them. I did it in the past many years ago. I should have. I passed your place before they put all the stop signs in, but it was a shortcut to work, and I did it. But they barrel off on 3rd Street, or maybe you should say slow down, and they come down my street, Pennsylvania Avenue. They also go to the next street, Michigan Avenue. They're going south, trying to avoid the lights, which they do. Some of them go on down to Illinois Avenue, probably going out to Tyndall. My point is they're using these roads as shortcuts. Now, I can't say they're speeding fast, but when I bought my home 40 years ago, I knew that the traffic out there was going to increase, and it has, and I've accepted it. But we never had the volume of traffic between the hours I mentioned this morning, in the mornings and the afternoon. Just it's like a lineup on Pennsylvania, Michigan.
I think we've got your point about the
Right.
the traffic.
I know you can't put speed bumps in, but can't you at least, can we put up a sign, slow, senior citizens, me, some of you, children out there play? Is there anything you can do to deviate this traffic?
We are still waiting on an appointment with our FDOT secretary. I'm still waiting to hear. I have not heard yet, but we do have a traffic division in Lynn Haven, and we do have a traffic committee. They can install stop signs at the request of citizens if you're having issues. I would suggest that maybe you make an appointment with Chief Ramey and tell him exactly where the area is, that you're talking about, and maybe some of the other residents what you'd like to see.
Excuse me for interrupting you, but I think he knows. I don't know, Mrs. Gaynor has talked to him, so I don't see a sense of talking to Chief Ramey. There are stop signs down there. They just go through them. I'm talking about the lineup of traffic that comes, not the speeding.
I don't think we can forbid people from coming off the road, sir. I mean, all we can do is if they're following the law and they're detouring onto a street, we can't stop that. So
You do have the right to put up signs, not stop signs, but can't you not put a sign saying, people live on the street, let's slow down a little bit?
why don't we have the traffic committee evaluate and look at it? I think that's a great idea. I love
Well,
that.
That's your idea, but I mean, does the
No,
commission
it's not
have?
my idea. It's the way the commission does this. We voted 2 years ago that when residents came to complain about a specific traffic issue, that they could bring the issue, the area where they're having the issue, before the commission. And if the commission approved, then the traffic committee could go forward with a sign, a stop sign, or warnings, whatever. But there is a process to go through, and it's much shorter than it used to be.
What are we looking at? Maybe 2 weeks?
The timeline has been much quicker than that in some cases, sir. But your Pennsylvania Avenue issue has been duly noted, and Michigan Avenue, I believe you mentioned
And
as
other
well.
streets too, Illinois. I mean,
Okay.
you lived on a busy street before they put up stop
I
signs.
still do, sir.
Yeah, I know you do. And
Okay,
like I
got
said,
it.
I was one in the early years
Okay.
did too.
We've
Well,
got it. Thank you.
I still got 3 minutes.
Well, we've gone well over that. That's why I was hoping we could get to the end of it. But thank you very much, and you're duly noted. Yes, sir.
My name is Jason Toole, 2907 Harrier Street. I met with city manager earlier about the Hawks Landing and the Bay Haven traffic. I didn't know if that was going to be on the agenda tonight or it was going to be discussed. It wasn't on there. So I didn't know if any decisions have been made.
I'll let city manager address because she did meet with the, I talked by phone with the.
That was me.
Okay, but
Yeah.
I'll let her address and we can go from there.
Mayor, we did meet and no, by the time we met, of course, this agenda was already out. And I do know that Chief Remy and our city engineer came out and met at your homeowners association,
They
am I
did, yeah.
correct?
Correct.
And their recommendation was to put to pull up the medium
All right.
and to put that additional lane there at this point. But I guess from my understanding is that you do have some residents within your area that are not particularly happy
Yeah,
about.
I think there's some people on both sides. So we basically just wanted to know what the process was. Like, will it actually be something you guys vote on to approve, or will it just be something that you decide to do? Or, I mean, we were just wondering if we'd be notified or when a decision would be made, what would happen.
I believe that this is going to probably be an ongoing discussion. It's not something we're going to just, because first of all, there's so many, it's a homeowners association. The streets are maintained by you.
Correct.
The problem.
Well, actually, no, it's city streets. It's city streets.
I
Sorry.
thought you told me
Yeah,
yesterday.
no, sorry, it's city streets.
Okay, I
Yeah,
had a
sorry.
mistaken bit of information then because I was thinking it was maintained by you. Then if it is city streets, then there's still more ongoing discussion to go. Because I specifically asked that question yesterday and I got a different answer, so I
Okay.
apologize.
Yeah, no,
Thank
that's
you.
fine. We don't have
Thank
the money
you.
to maintain.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Mayor, I will tell you that we do have an engineer that's doing some conceptual design, so we're waiting
Okay.
for that to get back as well.
So if they are city streets, then it'll become a city decision. So I had the wrong information, so I apologize. Thank you. Is there anyone else in the public that would like to speak? Then we'll move on to the consent agenda, item number 8. These are just 2 items, the minutes from the regular meeting and the special meeting on 9/24 and 9/25. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Any discussion from the public? There appears to be none. Ms. Gaynor, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Russell,
Yes.
Commissioner Parno,
Yes.
Commissioner Aldridge,
Yes.
Commissioner Tender,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes, and so they stand approved. Old business, number 9 is discussion and possible selection of annual auditing services award RFQ number 18/19-3, and our acting city manager has a report.
Mayor, this RFQ has gone out to bid twice, and I know that you all have a copy of the one bidder that sent in a proposal. And so really, I'm just asking for some direction here, whether or not you want to go ahead with that one bidder, or if we want to put it out for the 3rd time. I know we put it out at a time where probably people were very busy. Some of those firms were probably trying to catch up from a lot of work, and I can put it out a 3rd time if I'll need be. But right now, there was one proposal that came in.
I would open it for discussion from the commission on what they would like to see. I would just lead off by saying that I did have that discussion with the city manager yesterday, and the fact that it was a busy time with the fiscal year ending and all that. And I, because this has been a very personal thing for me for many years about getting a new auditing firm, I would certainly, not that there's anything wrong with the proposal that was submitted, nothing, but I would certainly like the opportunity to review more than one. And if we put it out a 3rd time and we didn't get, anything else, anyone else that's interested, then, of course, we're going to need to find an auditing firm for the city. But I would certainly like to see more than one proposal before I made a decision. That's just my input. Anyone else?
Mayor, if I may, I completely agree. I think we need to put it out. I'd like to see us go maybe in a different direction. I don't know where we advertise. If we are only putting it in the News Herald, maybe we need to broaden our scope a little bit. But in my checking in to this particular company, there are a lot of things that I think we could improve on.
Mayor, one of the things we personally do, and even the 2nd time around, is that we went and pulled together a list of firms and actually sent them the proposal directly so that we could get some other proposals in, and we did not hear from it, but we do feel like it was because that they had a very, very busy time.
Okay. Any other comments from the commission or
Yeah, yes,
suggestions?
ma'am.
Commissioner Aldridge?
I think I would concur that I would rather have more than one choice. And anytime you have one choice, they're holding more of the cards than we are, and I don't like that in any scenario. So I'm all for extending this out for a third attempt.
Okay. Anyone else?
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we put this out for the third time.
Second.
There's a motion and
Mayor.
a second. Is there any further discussion?
Mayor, just.
Oh,
a te-
sorry.
It's a technical
Sorry.
point, but if our motion could, contain a rejection of all bids and a resubmission of the solicitation, that way we're clear we're rejecting the current bidder.
Commissioner Russell, would you restate the motion, please?
Yes,
You can just
ma'am.
agree with,
Yes,
you can just
ma'am.
agree with the attorney what he
Yes,
said.
ma'am. I'll reword it, but I also would like to have a discussion too. My motion is to reject the current bid and put this back out for the third time for the RFQ.
Second.
A motion and a second. Now is there further discussion?
Yes, ma'am. Can the city attorney explain to me why we have to reject the current bid and why it can't be carried over to the next RFQ and include their bid in the next RFQ?
Because each time someone, if either we got to accept or a bid out of the group of bids that we solicit, or we have to reject them and move on to the next step. If that next step is to rebid the entire project, and that's what we have to do. Now, the individual the firm that has submitted, I believe both times, correct, Ms. Gaynor?
That is
They can
correct.
certainly come back a third time and submit their proposal, but we cannot just hold the bid and then rebid the project. We either got to reject them all and rebid it, or we have to accept the bidder.
Mayor, if I may,
Go ahead.
is that by state statute or is that by city charter? Or and I'm not. We had this problem come up with the roofs, and I had a roofing contractor complain to me that this is the exact same situation he went through, and I'm just trying to understand if this is potentially a qualified bid, why can't carry it over and include him in the next one without having to make him resubmit. I'm just trying to understand the process, understand why we have to do that.
One thing is it's traditional, and couldn't tell you off the top of my head for this particular solicitation, but the solicitation itself notates that the bidder will be either awarded, a bidder will be awarded, or they'll be rejected, and the city reserves the right to reject. Another issue is, although we're asking for qualifications here, if we were asking for any sort of pricing or anything else like that, that would add it'd be unfavorable to the bidders in the future or the current bidder, depending on the facts.
Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
And I appreciate that, the fact that with the monetary value included, but in the future, I would like the commission to consider rewording the RFQs to allow a single bid to be carried over. I mean, all you're doing is creating extra work for the contractor to submit for the next one. And if there's no monetary value involved, if it's just strictly qualifications, there's no reason we can't carry that bid over for the next RFQ.
But
Well,
if I
I
understood the attorney correctly, he said he couldn't say off the top of his head what was the statute, but he was saying that traditionally, and by tradition, law is tradition, is based on case. Go ahead, Mr. Albritton.
I certainly think in this case, the firm that submitted a bid for the previous two solicitations can certainly update their cover letter, attach their solicitation, and resubmit on the third one. And even Ms. Gaynor can reach out to them and ask if they're willing to do that. Ms. Gaynor, when did we receive the solicitation from this firm?
It was
Or-
in August.
In August. So now we're in October. That this firm may not wish to stand by those terms. They may not want to uphold that bid if we're rebidding it a third time. There's a number of different factors that could go into that.
Thank you, Mayor.
Sure. Are there other comments from the commission?
Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead.
Just a quick one here. I just want to say that if anybody from that company is watching in on the meeting, from me personally, it's not necessarily anything like was stated earlier against the company. I just think choices are always better. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you, Commissioner Aldridge.
Yes,
Is
ma'am.
anyone else on the board? Anyone from the public have a comment about this? Ms. Gaynor, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Russell,
Yes.
Commissioner Aldridge,
Yes.
Commissioner Perno,
Yes.
Commissioner Tender, yes, Mayor Anderson.
Yes. Stands approved. Item number 10, discussion and possible action regarding the scope of work for special auditing services. Our acting city manager has a brief report and explanation for this.
Yes. So Mayor did a little research and put together just a scope of trying to find someone who could do some special auditing services for us. and put together some outline, some areas that just listening to commission that they might want to include into this RFQ. What I need direction on is how long or how far we'd like to go back in terms of this special auditing firm to audit us. And thinking in terms of we've set aside about $100,000 and how far you want that to go. So I've given you an outline of just the scope of services, and the commission needs to give direction as if this scope of services will work, or if there are some items in here that you would like to see gone.
Are there comments from the commission?
Yes, Mayor, if I may ask a
Go
question.
ahead, Commissioner
Because
Perno.
I believe when we voted on this, we voted, the wording on the vote was that we were going to spend $100,000 and we were going to go backwards until the $100,000 was gone. So there was no back date set, or particularly start date. It was supposed, or other than the present. Am I not wrong in the way that was stated?
I think that I concur with you, Commissioner Perno, in what you're saying. As far as I believe that it was, we were looking at, from what the discussion was, and I'd have to recheck the minutes, that we were going to start from the time of the storm, which was the 10/10, and then see how far that went. I made some personal comments that, because of the fact that the city at this point is being intensely investigated as far as documents and invoices, it almost appears that, because of that we're spending money on something that's already being done and that we're going to hear results from. And so I think that maybe why city manager came up basically with a scope of work of some possibilities. But my understanding is once this special auditing firm comes in to look at these items that have been brought forward by, I believe Commissioner Tender brought the original request, they may, when you bring in an auditing firm, when you use the word forensic and they're coming in to audit the city, basically the city should not be the one telling them what they're going to be looking for. They are going to come in and they're going to look to see what they find.
Right.
But at the same point,
forensic doesn't apply here. Forensic means by the court, and no court is dictating this right now.
that's true, but it doesn't necessarily. I won't get into that. But anyway, I think my opinion of what was discussed before was that we were just going to make this very narrow. $100,000 is probably not going to go a very long way in this, and we'll just see. But
Is there any way we can table this until after the outcome of said investigation?
I'm just listening to your discussion, sir.
Mayor, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
First of all, I'm not opposed to tabling until after the investigation is over, but I would say that I would either be for starting currently and going back, or if we are going to pick certain years, I would prefer seeing a sampling of 1 year of under City Manager Lynch's term, 1 year under Joel Schubert's term, 1 year under Mike's term, and let's get a comparison of all three of them and see that they were all doing their jobs appropriately.
Commissioner Russell, you will probably be very surprised, but I totally concur.
I do too, actually. I think the context, I agree, Commissioner Russell. I think the context of everything is important. It's just like pulling one sentence out of a book and saying that's what the book's about. You can't really do that in all fairness. So I concur as well.
Again, can I ask a question of
Yes,
based on
Commissioner Perno.
what was just stated? Would $100,000 cover 3 years?
I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't.
I can tell you my opinion, but I don't know. Not yet.
Well, we would have to put this out for bid and get a company. So that would be the scope in which we would put it out. And then if we would need a motion to say that we want a sampling of 3 years under 3 separate city managers. Correct?
I don't even know if you would have to say a full year. I just think,
Mhm.
yeah, they know what they want to look for. So
I agree. Samplings. That's perfect.
Mayor, if I may.
yes,
Yeah, I believe that would be the motion that should be made, is that we make a motion that we direct the RFQ to say that we're going to sample 1 year from each city manager, not to exceed $100,000 without coming back before the commission. That, I think I would like to make that motion there.
I don't think you
Second it.
you didn't
Oh.
name the city managers. I mean, the first one.
The last three, City Manager Lynch, City Manager Schubert, and City Manager Michael White.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Any from the public? There appears, excuse me, sir, you're out of order. Well, but you can't just stand up and shout. Would you like to come to the podium, sir? Thank you.
What do you do if you find something?
That will remain to be seen, sir. I don't know. I'm not in that position. Is there anyone else from the public who'd like to speak? Yes. Do you want to speak from where you are, Mom? You can. Go ahead.
I would just like to say, make a big step, but if we're gonna try 3 different groups, then I would say if $100,000 is not enough money, make enough money to find out.
Okay.
Whatever it takes, that's my opinion.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? I think that looks like everybody from the public. Ms. Gaynor, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Russell,
Yes.
Commissioner Aldridge,
Yes.
Commissioner Perno,
No.
Commissioner Tender,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes. Stands approved. Moving on to new business, item number 11. This is discussion and approval to extend legal services contract with city attorney. Ms. Gaynor?
Mayor, we are to a point where we need to renew our current city attorney's contract. Came to us in October of 2018. It is coming upon October 22nd, where his contract will run out, and we need to either decide if we want to renew it or go out to bid. I would make the recommendation that we renew his contract. He has been with us since the storm. He has guided us on many issues, and he has been top-notch in helping the city to move forward.
Thank you. Anyone else? Go ahead, Ms. Tender.
I do have a comment to make, and I actually have a question. If this is the proper time, I wanted to ask Attorney Albritton, do you feel that you have any conflict of interest being our city attorney and being the attorney of other firms?
Any attorney from time to time may have a conflict, no matter which attorney you have. Your previous attorney, his firm represented a number of folks that may or may not have something that comes before. He may have represented somebody in the past that comes before the city commission, but I do not have an ongoing everyday conflict with any other clients that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, if I may.
Go ahead, Commissioner Russell.
I've been a commissioner now for 3 years, and have seen 2 attorneys, and I have to say, it's refreshing to have an attorney that will correct me or tell me if I'm wrong or do his job. And I don't mean that in a condescending way from the previous attorney, but I appreciate the fact that Mr. Albritton is willing to call me and tell me I'm wrong, with deference to whether he still has a job after he's told me I'm wrong. So I appreciate what he's done, and you've got my support on this. I know I'm not supposed to say that, but
No.
I'm sorry. Well, how about Mayor, if I may, I'll make a motion that we accept this, or that we extend his contract per the 2 years that he's requesting.
Second.
So there's been a motion and a second, and I would ask for further discussion from the board. Any? I'd like to add just a couple of comments. One, the commission voted a while back, because it was something that really I had pushed forward, to have an in-house attorney to save money, because I had a book this big. We'd had the same law firm for over 20 years as well. And so we did get an in-house attorney with the storm. Her husband was deployed, and she was not able to continue because Mr. Albritton had been her mentor. She wasn't allowed to have the mentor due to state statute. So it all came down to Mr. Albritton stepping in. I admire him because he is in a firm in which he is the sole attorney. He has a small office on 11th Street. I've known him for a very long time. His character is above anything that I would ever look at as far as if I were looking for someone to represent me personally. I trust him. I respect him. He has not overcharged the city in any way. If you look at what he charged over these past months and the hours he's put in, I know for a fact the first weeks after the storm, he did not bill us at all. He worked side by side. He's been a volunteer. He's cleaned the streets. He's done any job he was asked to do. He handed out supplies during the storm. And I just wanted to say that I'm honored to know you. I'm glad that you have been beside us, and I hope that this vote will go in that direction. So thank you.
Thank you for the kind words, Mayor.
And Mayor, if I may, I have to throw in my hat in the ring on that one. I also think that Adam has done a very good job. I've never been a big fan of attorneys, being a business person, but they're good when you need them. But I like this guy, and he's done a good job. So thank you, Adam.
Thank you, Commissioner.
And since my daughter's also an attorney, I am a big fan. So is there any discussion from the public? Mr. Schultz?
Yeah.
If you'll come to the microphone. I deferred to my mother because of her leg. I'm sorry.
Okay. Will the charges and salary be the same?
He is billing us on an as needed. It's a contract, sir. The contract is in the packet.
And Mayor, my rates
Go
are not
ahead.
increasing.
His rates are not increasing. Thank you. Did that answer your question, Mr. Schultz? Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Oscar Langston, 309 Bay Wing Loop, Hawks Landing. Mr. Albritton, I got one question for you. If you ever come up to a situation where you have a conflict of interest, would you recuse yourself from that situation and let someone else take care of it?
Sir, the Florida Bar dictates the ethical rules that I'm obliged to apply to. So the first step is noting with either both clients, the appropriate client or clients, that there is a conflict, and then proceeding forward from there. There are a number of different options that you can have that the client has under the law, but it is incumbent upon me when there is a conflict to make sure that my clients are aware of the conflict.
Okay, thank you.
Are there other comments from the public? There appear to be none. Ms. Gaynor, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Russell,
Yes.
Commissioner Perno,
Yes.
Commissioner Aldridge,
Yes.
Commissioner Tender,
No.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes, does pass, and congratulations, sir. Item number 12, discussion and possible approval of proposed commission meeting dates November 12th, 2019 and December 10th, 2019 to accommodate holiday schedules. Ms. Gaynor, could you give an explanation for
Yes,
those,
ma'am.
please?
Mayor, every year the commission looks at the dates that are in the holiday season. Most of the time that these dates, our second commission meeting, will fall very close or near some of the holidays. In November, our second meeting falls in November 26th, and then our meeting in December falls December 24th. Past years, the commission has voted to have one meeting per month in November and December.
Thank you. Is there a motion from the commission or discussion?
So moved.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion from the commission regarding this?
Yes, ma'am. If I
Go
could,
ahead.
I just want to put out there that we're, this isn't necessarily the commission. I think we'll meet anytime, any place. It's more about having citizen participation and having people in town and being able to come to the meeting. So, I don't want people to think we're just trying to get out of work. So that's not it.
And well, I would add to that, Commissioner Aldridge, that if we were to have some business come up that we needed to have a meeting, we can certainly call a special meeting. So that's not a problem. Is there any further comments about this? There's been a motion and a second. Any from the public? Mr. Schultz?
Okay, so I assume you will be paid for those days, right?
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Ms. Gaynor, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Tender,
Yes.
Commissioner Russell,
Yes.
Commissioner Perno,
Yes.
Commissioner Aldridge,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes, so it does stand approved. Item number 13, discussion and approval of resolution number 2019-10-304, accepting legislative funding for street paving through FDOT. That's our acting city manager. We do need to read the resolution, Mr. Albritton.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Ms. Gaynor.
A resolution of the governing body of the City of Lynn Haven, Florida, accepting a state-funded grant agreement between the City of Lynn Haven, Florida, and the State of Florida Department of Transportation Department, providing for severability and providing an effective date. Mayor, this is a resolution that is required to go with agreement that the commission has already discussed, but has not voted on completely. This is $1 million that we received from the state to repair many of our roads that were damaged by Hurricane Michael. This is totally reimbursable.
Thank you. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved. Second.
There's been a motion by Commissioner Aldridge and a second by Commissioner Tender. Is there any further discussion from the board? There appears to be none. Any questions or discussion from the public? Appears to be none. Ms. Gaynor, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Aldridge,
Yes.
Commissioner Tender,
Yes.
Commissioner Russell,
Yes.
Commissioner Perno,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes, so it stands approved. Item number 14, this is discussion and possible approval of the reactivation of the 1911 Platte Residential Incentive Program. And Mr. Ben Janke, our Economic Development Director, I believe, has a small report.
Thank you, Mayor. You may recognize this type of incentive. The CRA board talked about this at the previous CRA board meeting to this type of incentive. This incentive is pretty much the same. It just applies to a different area, the 1911 Platte lesson, except the CRA area. If you take a look on page 4, you can actually see the area that it applies to. So the City Commission decided to freeze or to put this incentive on hold also on January of this year, and staff is requesting to reactivate it.
Okay, thank you. Is there a motion for either discussion or approval?
So moved
For discussion or approval?
for approval.
Thank you.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Any from the public? There appears to be none. Ms. Gaynor, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Russell,
Yes.
Commissioner Aldridge,
Yes.
Commissioner Perno,
Yes.
Commissioner Tender,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes, stands approved. Item number 15, discussion regarding moving the police and fire departments under the City Commission. This is Commissioner Tender's item.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to bring this to the commission because obviously this is where we have to discuss it. I've also discussed this with Chief Ramey on occasion, and I just feel like if we had our police chief and our fire chief report to the commission, then we would never have to worry about any conflict between the city manager and the police chief and the fire chief. If they reported to us, then there would never be an issue, I think, with what Chief Ramey had to go through previously, reporting to the city manager, his boss. And that's why I just wanted to bring it up to see if anybody had given it any thought or what you think of the idea, if you're opposed or.
Yeah, Commissioner Jenner, the way I also, when I saw this coming up, I asked about it and I got with the attorney, and it appears that in the charter, it does state that any of the hiring, and I know you know this, any of the hiring and firing that goes on will also be under the purview of the commission. So I think just reiterating possibly that is the way the process is. And again, I would have to defer to our attorney on the processes of how that could work, of making an edit, or if it is an entire charter change to make an edit. But you know, I think it's spelled out pretty well as is, in my opinion, even though there is a difference there. So I do acknowledge that.
Okay.
Mayor, if I may.
Go ahead, please.
I too reached out to Chief DeLange and Chief Ramey about the issues and expressed my concerns to them about this. First, the biggest issue I have is politicizing their job. Suppose, Chief Ramey determines that we have a traffic issue in front of Hawks Landing and they sit down there and they write 100 tickets. you have 100 residents call this commission and complain, it only takes 3 of us to fire him. That politicizes a job that doesn't need to be politicized. He needs to have the insulation away from the political arm of this city, in my opinion. The other issue I have with it is timing. You know, there are times that they have to make decisions and have to purchase products or whatever that for us to make that decision, we have to advertise the meeting, and then we have to hold the meeting before we can make the decision. So that slows down the process for them to do some of the things that they need to do. Those 2 alone are big enough issues that I would not like to see this move forward. But that's, again, my opinion. So thank you, Mayor.
Mayor,
Oh, go ahead.
I was thinking, and I can appreciate that, the fact that it could slow down. I wasn't thinking of actually ordering materials and things of that nature because we seem to do that in budget. But I was thinking about the fact that neither one of these people, either chief, should have to fear for their job when their boss comes to them and says, hey, carry me here, carry me there. Let's go check on my house. Whatever the case may be, I just don't think that that's the right position for them to have to be in. And what can they say? But yes, who says no to their boss? I don't know very many people.
I would, if I may, also just bring this point up. The way the charter is stated about the fire chief or the police chief, it does ask that the city manager get the approval of the commission for who they hire or fire regarding these 2 positions. So there is a safeguard already there. And I will speak to a very specific part of this with Chief Ramey. I'm so proud that he is our police chief, and and hopefully this will never come up again. But when he was put in the very precarious position of the person who is his boss, was in violation, allegedly in violation of a law, he and I did have a conversation because he didn't call me to ask me what to do. But when there is an emergency, I'm always called as mayor. He didn't ask what he should do. He called me and told me what he was going to have to do to go forward. And he said he had protocols to follow. He informed me what the protocols were, and I agreed with the fact that he was going forward with the protocol. So even when it included having to go through with an arrest that involved the person he's directly employed beneath, he went forward and he did those things that are his protocols. And when you have law enforcement or your first responders, the most important thing in their job, in my opinion as mayor, is that they don't have to think about what they do. They have a set list of things that they know they have to do, and they just do them automatically, and they don't worry about whose feelings it hurts or what's going to happen afterwards. They just do the right thing. So congratulations, Chief. I just wanted to bring that up. So, but I do see what your questions were, and I do think that it could be argued either way. I think that any job in a city government is political in some way, anyone. And so we all just have to do the right thing and do the best that we can to make sure that we do, is my opinion.
And the only reason I brought it up was it was on their behalf, because I want them to be able to do their job. God knows we want them to be able to get to everybody as fast as they need to. And I did not think about the supply thing, but I just wanted to put it out there and just get a feel for what everybody thought.
I think you made good points. I really do. Anybody else have anything else to say about it? So we're not going forward with the motion. We just had the discussion. And is that okay with you, Commissioner?
yes.
That we end this? Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. So then we'll move on to item number 16, which is discussion regarding the regulations of design and aesthetics for existing and new properties along commercial corridor of Highway 77. And Commissioner Aldridge brought this item forward.
Yes, ma'am. One of the things I'm wanting to look into going forward is the aesthetics. We brought this up, at some of our workshops that we've had in the past, but the aesthetics of the city. I don't really necessarily like the verbiage on this, because the existing buildings, the ones that just had their insurance stuff, in my mind, are going to be grandfathered in. But if you go down 77, you'll look and you'll see along that corridor, there's a lot of open space.
Sensor lights.
I guess y'all are done. We'll go home. You'll notice there's a lot of empty lots along the corridor there. those lots are going to be bought. They're going to be developed over, I would say, the next probably 5 to 7 years. I think we'll see a flood of development coming in. I can't guarantee that, but what I don't want is us to have a city that we look back on in 10 years and everything is hodgepodged or nothing matches. And there's no theme or unity really to our area when people ride through. I don't want people riding through going straight to the beach. We want people riding through saying, hey, this is a neat place, let's hang out, give it a shot. In order to do that, though, I don't really understand the process for moving this forward. So, I'd like to direct some of the city staff by motion and maybe our attorney on the language and the ordinances that we can pass that would allow any future developments to fall within our aesthetic codes, basically.
Amanda Richardson and I actually had this conversation, and I'm going to ask Amanda to come up and kind of talk about the things that we feel like some of the issues we probably want to address if, we want to look at this code and if we wanted to move forward.
Hello. We actually currently do have an ordinance that is for Highway 77 outside of the areas that are the CRA. It's a corridor overlay, and also on 390 for new development. So those vacant parcels that you're talking about, when a developer submits for a development order for those parcels, they also are going to have to submit renderings to show that they meet what we currently have. That does not address things like color or styles. What it addresses are things like for every 100 foot, you have to have recesses of a certain depth or windows or architectural features, roof lines, those kinds of things. If you want to go further and actually decide on a certain style, a certain aesthetic, then that's something that can be done, but you would have to decide what kind of color palettes you were looking at, what kind of roof lines you wanted. So I don't know if you want to become familiar with what we already have and then think about if you wanted to be more specific than that.
Right.
I will share with you that one of the major problems that we have is with those current buildings that may be damaged and are being refurbished. We don't have anything that addresses current buildings, and that could be a bit trickier. Although there is a possibility that if you had a certain design standard for current buildings, those that are there are grandfathered in, but if they're damaged and they need a new roof or something, then when they come for their building permits, they then have to show us what they're going to do. In which case, did you want to have some kind of a board that looks at those, or did you want staff
I think it should fall under possibly the beautification board.
do
or
that?
planning
So
board.
these are all things, for you all to think about. And another thing I wanted to mention is that when Mr. Lynch was the city manager, he wanted to get a particular look for the city, which is why our Walmart looks the way it does, and the color scheme is the way it is. They actually, I don't know if you remember, about 2 years ago or 2.5 years ago, we suddenly realized that they had started to paint it Battleship Gray. And we contacted Walmart and said, hey, what's going on? And they said, well, we have permission to change the color. And I was like, no, you didn't. And they said, it turns out they didn't even know where Lynn Haven was. The corporate office had contacted Panama City and asked if they could change the color, and they were given permission by Panama City. And then they proceeded to start painting ours. So they had to paint it back. And that's why Whataburger looks the way it does. There will be backlash. I just want to make you aware of that also, that if you do become stringent, even getting Whataburger to look like Whataburger was a battle, because corporate offices like to make everything look the same. However, if it's a place they really want to come to, they will do it. I just want you to kind of, bear all those things in mind.
Let me ask you this
Thank
as
you.
well. Could we, if we put in the language of what we have now, and I like the architectural changes and things that we have in there now, the code. But if we put the verbiage in there, for example, and I'm going to use a crazy example, okay, so no one think this is real. If we say Lynn Haven wants only Las Vegas style buildings, right? And it's under the agreement of the building department of Lynn Haven. or the planning
The
department.
planning department.
So would you guys be able, if we change the words, to look at that and say, yeah, this isn't Vegas, this is New England style, so we're not going to approve it? In other words,
Yeah,
just alter it a little bit. to give
Yeah,
us more
you're going to have
control.
to be really specific in your definitions.
Okay.
Otherwise, legally, you could get caught up in all
Right.
sorts of problems. I
That's
think.
the kind of things I want to look into here. is
Yeah.
if we do
So
that.
it might be better for you to identify the kind of styles that you like, find pictures or, places where you like the buildings, identify the kind of color palettes and that kind of thing that you want. It depends how specific you want to get. But then once you've put that in place, it's easy because then we just look at it and we look to see whether it meets it or not.
Thank you for that information. And I would add that Mr. Janke and then the planning board, the CRA board, that we have really branded the CRA with sort of the old Florida architecture, even the bus stops and, and all that kind of thing. And it might just be something to work for. I think the corridor to have maybe some new guidelines, some better guidelines, but it's almost like that horse race has already run. The corridor has kind of taken its own direction, but maybe there's some creative things that people can come up with. I would suggest a workshop, maybe that we all spend a morning talking and looking at ideas and bringing in some people to talk with us. What do you think? Oh, Ben, did you have something? Go ahead.
I just wanted to mention that the CRA actually already has these architectural guidelines in place that you're referring to in terms of color selection, architectural style, the type of sign that you're allowed to, commercial sign that you're allowed to display on your property. So within the CRA, these standards already exist. So maybe that might be a good starting point to see if this should be applied to the entire city.
So do we want to just leave it there, or would someone like to make a motion for a workshop or a?
I'd like to make a motion for a workshop. To be determined. I don't have a date. We'll get with the city manager on it, but I would like to have a workshop, and I'd like to have in that motion the existing architectural guidelines that we have, and some staff possible recommendations on how we can maybe alter some of these things to give us a little more control on the designs. And then if we need to get with Attorney Albritton, we can get with him as well and make sure we're not, climbing under some legal hurdles instead of going over like we're supposed to. So make sure we're doing it right. But yes, I'd like to make that motion if I could, please.
Second.
There's a motion and a second for a workshop to discuss some possible ideas for some branding and some new ideas for how to make our city look more beautiful and maybe more with some connectivity between the architectural styles. Any objection, discussion? Any from the public? Mr. Schultz.
Thank you very much. Just a question, how wide is the corridor 77? The reason I say that, because Ohio Avenue is all commercial. The west side of Pennsylvania is pretty much commercial or semi-use, whatever you want to call it. Certain sides at the east side of Pennsylvania are the same. So when you're talking about the Highway 77 corridor, what are you talking basically about?
I believe what he means is, I believe he means from probably the Bailey Bridge to the Panama City city limits going south and north.
How wide
I
is
don't know
the
how
corridor?
wide it is, sir. We can
Could
find
we
out.
ask somebody?
We can find out maybe in the workshop.
Wouldn't
Have it.
anybody here know?
It says according to all facades of visible from Highway 77 and or Highway 390, other than those either on Highway 77 or 390. So it's from Highway 77 back to 390.
East. Thank you.
I thought you meant the width and yardage, sir. I'm sorry. I didn't know the dimensions. Thank you very much. All right. At this point, we'll move to the next item, which is the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for coming. We did not vote. Hold up. The meeting is not adjourned. We're back in order. Ms. Gaynor, would you please call the roll?
Sorry. Commissioner Aldridge?
Yes.
Commissioner Russell?
Yes.
Commissioner Tender? Yes. Commissioner Perno?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes. The width of 77 threw me off. I apologize.